The multiverse is a concept in which we know little, but in No Way Home, some hints provided throughout the film have helped us understand the story more. No Way Home features 4 villains from the previous Spider-Man franchises, with each of them being brought into the MCU at specific moments from their films, and even an anti-hero in the mid-credits scene. In this video, I want to go over which exact moments those are in order to give a better understanding of the story, since it can be a bit confusing. I'll also be discussing when Tobey and Andrew were pulled, since that could play into the moments that some of the villains were pulled from. With the movie, we know that the botched spell pulled in everybody who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man from multiple universes, with Strange containing most of it except for the characters featured in the film. But one thing we don't know is if every villain was pulled from when they realized Peter Parker was Spider-Man. There's also an issue in the film since Elektra and Venom never knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, so with those two, I'll do my best to explain how they could end up in the MCU. To begin, we'll start with Tobey and Andrew, whose stories are probably the easiest to understand, having both of them pulled from present day after the events of their last films. It's hinted that MJ and Tobey ended up making it work, even though it's still complicated. Some things never change, I guess. And Andrew's Spider-Man is from a time after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, who has dealt with the death of Gwen Stacy a lot. There's more to explore with their characters, and I'm glad we don't know much about their stories after their films, since it would have been kind of strange if they mentioned villains their characters never fought off screen. So with Tobey and Andrew, it appears they have been brought into the MCU in their present day form. Starting with the villains, we will be going in order from when they appeared on screen, so Goblin's up first, with the rest of the villains on sabbatical for the moment. With the Goblin, we don't know exactly when he was pulled, but what we do know is that it was sometime before he died in Spider-Man 1. The two most popular theories have been during the Thanksgiving scene in Spider-Man 1, that would be a bit strange, and of course right before the glider impacts him during the final fight. Personally, I think he was pulled right before the glider hit him, and it would be the craziest retcon if Norman were to return cured at that moment, leading us to the "Oh, and don't tell Harry" being cured Norman talking. Next we have Doc Ock, who explains exactly where he was pulled from in the film, or at least from what he can remember, which is when Peter revealed his identity to him at the end of Spider-Man 2, and most likely at this exact moment. Originally, Alfred Molina said that his story would pick up after he drowned in the river, but I do think it makes more sense for Otto to be pulled right at this moment before he redeems himself, since this is really the last moment that Otto is evil in the film. It's also funny to think that Otto was pulled right before the fusion reactor needed to be shut down, leaving Spider-Man all alone having to find a way to do it, and who knows if he was even able to do that. The final Raimi villain featured in No Way Home is Sandman, and from the looks of it, he was pulled sometime after the events of Spider-Man 3, likely present day, the same as Tobey and Andrew. I say this because when he first meets Tom Holland's Spider-Man, he asks if he remembers him, so maybe it's been a while since Tobey and Flint have seen each other, and he also doesn't know Peter Parker is Spider-Man until the ending of Spider-Man 3. It's also good to know that Penny is still around after all these years, but it appears Sandman's condition has gotten worse since he's entirely made of sand now, and I also really like how the film didn't really make him a villain, but just somebody who wants to box so he can go home and see his daughter. Moving on to the Amazing Spider-Man universe, like Sandman, it appears that the Lizard was pulled after the events of his respective film. I say this because the Lizard can recall the events of TASM 1 when Elektra was talking to him, and he's also unaware if he dies. Also, like Sandman, it appears his condition has gotten worse, so we can theorize that this Lizard mutation may have been permanent, and it's even hinted at in the Amazing Spider-Man mid-credit scene that he still has some of the Lizard formula in his body. So he's either been released from prison since TASM 1, or he transformed into the Lizard again and escaped. Electro is the final villain, and also another who explains when he was pulled in the films. However, it is a bit confusing since he never finds out Peter Parker is Spider-Man in TASM 2. Electro was pulled from the final fight of TASM 2 when he was about to become pure energy, which I still think he died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but according to Electro he almost died, but at least we've seen this moment on film. Way back in the day, I remember people saying that Electro didn't die, but he just absorbed the battery, but personally I do think he died in the film. Tom Hardy's Venom is the final villain, and it's also a bit confusing and overall a wasted opportunity for me. But once again, this is somebody who doesn't know Peter was Spider-Man, unless this symbiote is the same one left in Dr. Connor's lab from Spider-Man 3 and it's just traveled across the universe. But Venom was pulled after the events of Venom 2 and sent back just like that, with a piece of the symbiote being left behind in the MCU. Not really much to explain here since we did see both of these moments as he entered and left the MCU on screen. Again, I think it's a wasted opportunity just to bring Tom Hardy's Venom into the MCU just for him to leave just like that. I do want to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man fight him, but now the rumor is that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man will be taking on Tom Hardy's Venom, which I'm perfectly okay with. So there you have it. When the villains plus Tobey and Andrew were pulled from that led them into the MCU, let me know what you all think, and hopefully this helped anyone confused with the story or time period in the film. And as always, thanks for watching, be sure to subscribe, follow my social medias, hit that like button, and I will see you guys again in my next video.